Today I decided to
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
No! God, please, no!
Today I decided to have a look at something different. Today I'm gonna make my first weird video of 2022. It feels very weird because I haven't said the word weird in a video in a really long time.
I didn't know.
You just come in girls without even asking? Like, Jesus.
Holy shit! Did you just come in your sister?
I wanted to talk about South Korean series, especially the ones that came out on Netflix in the last few weeks, but I didn't want to actually do a breakdown of every single one of them. I wanted specifically to look at all the things that South Korean series do well and what we can learn from them, and how basically we can make American series better, we can make British series better, we can make any other type of series, and basically we can only learn from that industry.
Fucking twat.
We're gonna be having a look at Hellbound, The Silent Sea, and the very recent All of Us Are Dead. Of course, all of these series here, they have got crazy good ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. Honestly, when it comes to rating score across the internet, when it comes to series, the numbers tend to be quite high. I mean, I even tried to Google the 7th season of the CW The Flash, and it actually had a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes.
You can stop it. You can do this now. Run, Barry, run!
Let's look at The Silent Sea, or in Korean, Gwini Pada. It is written by Park and Kyo and directed by Cho Han-young. By the way, I'm gonna be stopping once in a while to have some water because my throat is actually not killing me, but it was killing me a couple of days ago, so it is just a bit tired.
도대체 이게 뭐가 어떻게 된지 모르겠네.
대장님, 전방에 생체 신호가 다가옵니다. 지금 바로 코앞입니다.
Let's get into the plot of The Silent Sea, which is set in the dystopian near future when the planet suffers from a lack of water and food caused by desertification, and basically a team of scientists is given the mission to go to the moon and retrieve mysterious sample from an abandoned research station. Spoiler alert here, the show focuses on a weird new type of lunar water that multiplies exponentially when it comes in contact with human/living organisms. And of course it is starring the one and only, the beautiful, the exceptional Bae Doona. Thank you, Lord, for allowing us to witness our incredible talent. Thank you. Or 감사합니다, if we want to say it in Korean.
You cheeky bastard.
When it comes to this series here, it is maybe the least good when it comes to the series that I'm gonna be talking about today, but it is still a lot better than a lot of different attempts at creating low-budget sci-fi original shows that I've seen in a really long time. One thing that I really liked here, and I actually never noticed that this was a cliche, that this was an actual science fiction trope before seeing The Silent Sea, and it's that in this series, the team members, they don't actually fight that much in between each other. And when I say that, it might seem stupid, it might seem that it is not well dramatized, but it's not really true. It's just that these people, they actually respect each other enough not to start like punching each other or shoving each other's away just because they're having disagreements on certain specific parts of their missions. And it's something that I got used to just because of how Americans tend to put on that kind of very aggressive personality of this is my opinion, and even though you're my boss, I have to express it and be really angry and forward about it. And I feel like we have sort of like taken that kind of trope and we have expressed it in a lot of science fiction films and TV series, but here they don't do it. I really like how basically they treat each other like normal human beings. They respect each other because of their rank, ranks. And even though some people might, for example, question certain aspects of the mission, they do it in very logical ways, or if they do it in emotional ways, the person who is receiving all of this information, he never actually snaps at them. He actually listens to their worries and he actually gives them a correct answer. I think it's something that we could definitely learn when it comes to how to write good characters and good interactions in between team members, because we have to remember that very often, especially astronauts, they have to work together, they have to live together for a really, really long time. So there is no way, for example, that you would send up there people who don't work together well, who don't know how to follow the chain of command. And very often this kind of chain of command is always broken when it comes to American TV shows and TV series. Another thing that I really like when it comes to the Silent Sea, it's the perfect show to show how you can do incredible things and special effects with a low budget. For example, this takes place in a space station on the moon, and even though it is quite repetitive when it comes to the look of the station itself, it never feels like we're stuck looking at the same four walls. It always feels interesting, it always feels quite inventive when it comes to the camera work. And even though, for example, there are some people who start dying because of the lunar water, the transformation itself, we see it a lot of different times, but every single time, even though it is the same effect, when it comes to the special effects, it feels different. It feels emotionally resonant in different ways because not every single character is going to react to it in the same way. Let's go to Hellbound, which is called 지옥 in Korean. It is directed by Yeon Sang-ho, and who is of course the director of Train to Busan and the really good Psychokinesis, which I recommend as well.
공포가 세상 사람들을 죄에서부터 해방시킬 거야.
Before I tell you the plot, let's have some water, because once again my throat is killing me. I really like water. It must be my favorite drink. An otherworldly face called an angel suddenly starts to materialize to deliver prophecies called decrees that condemn certain individuals to hell at a very specific future time, either seconds or years away. And then 3 hulking supernatural monsters appear at almost the exact time to maul and incinerate the person's body in a sort of spectacular show of force. Across the years, 2 different organizations, the cult-like New Truth Society, which is basically mirroring Christianism, and the gang-like Arrowhead group gain power by playing on people's fears. And Netflix had a big spike in viewership when it comes to this show, an even bigger spike than they had back in October, November with Squid Game, so it is a series that is really beloved from the audience and from the critics' perspective as well, and I really see why. First of all, it's a really short series, it's 6 episodes. It keeps reinventing itself because at the 3rd episode there is a jump in time and we start telling the story from a different perspective. And that is actually... Let's get some water.
Rule number 1, never put your bottle down your throat. Like so.
And that is actually something that I wanted to address as well, because when you think about series, especially lately, we've had a lot of really good actors being put into these HBO Max, Disney Plus series, and they're supposed to carry the entire cast. So we know that basically they're gonna stay around for the entire season, and we know what to expect when it comes to the pacing of the show. It has become quite common. What I like about this series here is that it takes risks. It takes risk when it comes to the script itself and when it comes to the different characters, and it decides to tell the story through 2 different lenses and to cut to the future to a different cast. And I really like that choice, and I feel like that's something that is not really done when it comes to American series, and is not really done also when it comes to other major European series. We are so afraid of losing viewerships because people tend to get attached so much to certain actors or characters that we're trying to tell the same story over and over again, and we're not taking as many risks. There is a very impactful scene in this season here, for example, where the professor, who is the main character in the story, is actually killed very brutally, and the series is not even done. So you start asking yourself, okay, if this main character is dying here, who is actually gonna bring the story to the end? And it's actually quite cool, because when you don't have these kind of expectations on who is gonna die, who is gonna leave, and who is gonna not be the main character anymore, then you actually invest yourself in the main story a lot more.
어떻게 보면 지옥에서는 혐오적인 모습이라든가 아니면 공포에 휩싸인 사람들의 어떤 변해가는 모습, 그런 것들을 좀 그전에 했던 작품들의 뭐 총합 같은 느낌으로 좀 해봤던 것 같습니다.
Think about Squid Game as well. All the different characters will get murdered by the end, and I'm pretty sure that's exactly why that series was so emotionally impactful, because you never knew exactly who was gonna die and who was gonna survive. Need more H2O. To be honest, like, the writing in Hellbound is so good, they reminded me of Black Mirror. You could literally stop watching after the third episode and it would be its own very contained and tragic story. But let's move on from the narrative of Hellbound and talk about the actual themes. One of the main themes of this series focuses on mob mentality, and I wanted to bring up an example from a film that came out last year on how not to address this particular theme, Halloween Kills. In Halloween Kills, it is shown that basically the mob mentality is bad because at the scene at the hospital, they start chasing someone who has escaped a mental institution, thinking that that person is actually Michael Myers, even though that patient over there is not dressed like Michael Myers, he's not carrying a knife, he's not carrying any kind of weapons, he's not carrying even the iconic mask. They just see someone who looks like someone who escaped a mental institution and they jump to the conclusion that it must be the same person, which is stupid. So mob mentality equals stupid when it comes to Halloween Kills. But I don't think that that's what actually mob mentality means, and that's not exactly the good way of addressing that kind of theme. Here in Hellbound, you've got a perfect representation and critique of mob mentality. Why? Because it doesn't call them stupid, it makes you understand why these people would actually react to the demonstrations in a very specific way. It actually shows you how, whether you're a religious person or not, you'd still be afraid and you'd want to be on the side of the many instead of standing out and risking that you will be killed or you will be shunned by the new truth or even aimed at by the arrowhead. There is a lot of politics involved when it comes to how they represent the mob mentality into this season here, and it is incredibly effective. The other theme that they explore quite effectively when it comes to the series here is, of course, the religious fanatism, and it's done quite beautifully. I think even when it comes to how capitalism introduces itself within the religion and how basically they turn scenes of crimes into museums, into places of worship, and basically they commodify the violence that these angels are actually committing so that people can consume it in a very safe way. I feel like this series is also so effective because it came out once again during the pandemic, and we are very eager to believe anything that will take us out of the dangerous situation in which we're all living nowadays. And it is the same thing when it comes to the people who are living in the world of Hellbound. Another thing, of course, that is apparent in every single Korean series that I was talking about today is the action stunts and how incredibly good they are and how dynamic they feel. This is even more true when it comes to the series that I'm talking about right next, All of Us Are Dead.
네가 왜 학교에 나와? 영화에 나와야지.
Also called 지금 우리 학교는 because it is a series about zombies and about surviving a zombie apocalypse, so of course there is a lot of action. All of Us Are Dead is directed by Lee Jae-kyoo and Kim Nam-so, and it is written by Chan Song-il, and it is basically giving a nice and interesting spin to the zombie apocalypse. There is no jump in time. This is actually happening in real time. We're seeing how the whole zombie apocalypse is actually happening and why the police and why the firefighters are unable to actually contain it just because of how everything is being spread out and how misinformation is also playing a big role. There are so many incredible things that I liked when it comes to this season here. This is when I realized that Korean series work really well because they are genre series. They tend to focus a lot on supernatural stuff, they tend to focus on science fiction, tend to focus on horror, and the interesting thing is that they try to actually change those genres and they try to rewrite a couple of cliches that we have when it comes to those specific genres. When you think back about the series that are very acclaimed nowadays, it is mostly drama. When you think about French series, when you think about Italian series as well, things like Gomorrah, very often it's dramas, and dramas don't attract the attention of the public as much as the big genres like sci-fi, horror, and the supernatural, because those allow us to actually work on a lot of interesting themes, but they give us interesting visuals and action sequences at the same time. So that's a big plus when it comes to Korean series. They're really pushing into those corners there. For example, if you think about superhero series, they keep it very PG-13, meaning that it is kind of like just a drama slash comedy with a bit of action sequences. And of course, a series that is like that is not going to be that interesting because it looks like 100 other series that are on right now. Just think about all the CW shows like Superman and Lois, The Flash. It has been going on for more than 10 years now, so we are accustomed to those kind of dramas. And Korean series are actually doing something different when it comes to the different narratives and how they take a lot of different risks with the series themselves. When it comes to All of Us Are Dead, so many different tiny things that they do to just rewrite the genre. There's one thing that I really like, for example, and it's very simple, and it's when the students, for example, they've managed to secure a place in a room. One of them actually says something that is incredibly obvious, but did anyone go to the toilet? Did anyone take a shit? And it's such a good question because, I mean, when you're so busy like trying to survive, you have to go to the toilet as well. It seems like incredibly stupid, but even in The Walking Dead, I can't think of a single time where someone said, oh, can you guard the door because I have to go and take a shit, because I literally can't if I know that there are zombies outside. It's such a simple thing, it's such a funny thing as well. Korean series tend to play with tone really well. They commit to being scary, to being serious, and then they are gonna make some interesting editing things which are gonna make a scene way more funny and also way more realistic. So that is the main theme that I'm gonna go back on once again: realism. Realism is in this series here because we are, for example, presented with a group of teenagers who are trying to survive the zombie apocalypse, so they are allowed to be stupid, they are allowed to be humans, they're allowed to make a lot of mistakes that adults aren't really allowed anymore when it comes to zombie apocalypses. They're allowed to ask questions that adults don't really ask anymore, things like, should we just wait it out and see if the adults actually save us? Things like, let's try if the internet is actually working, let's try to get that phone over there from that room so we can actually call the emergencies. Even though they've already done it, they want to do it again because they have no idea what to do. This is the first time they're actually completely independent and they have to make their own choices, but they keep going in circles because they have no ideas. They have no ideas on how to survive something that they've never lived through. Something that I really like and that pushes on that realism once more is the fact that someone actually references Train to Busan in this series here. And that's so cool. They actually call them zombies because they are zombies, and they actually talk about pop culture and about films and about how things are so much different. And it's such an easy thing to do, and zombie films almost never do it. They don't acknowledge the fact that there have been so many different films and series about it, and people still have a hard time surviving, even though they are kind of prepared mentally when it comes to zombie apocalypses.
그 장소의 라이팅이나 미술적인 색감들 이런 것들에 대해서 되게 고민을 많이 했고요. 이런 걸 또 온전하게 표현하기 위해서 100m에 가까운 세트를 지었어요. 그러니까 실제 4층짜리 학교가 지어졌다고 해도 과언이 아니거든요.
Another thing that I really like that goes really well when it comes to realism, very often within the genre, it is about killing zombies, right? But this is teenagers. Most of the people that they would be killing, it's their friends. It's people who they knew, and it's people who are actually walking in the corridors and they saw on an everyday basis. So it makes sense that they wouldn't want to kill all of them. They wouldn't want to be like this massacre. So they try to avoid them, and they literally parkour in the different corridors, in the different rooms, using everything that is at their disposal to try to escape and move around the school. And that's something that has been done only in video games, in something like Dying Light. And it shows how important it is to have that kind of parkour skill that allows you to get away from zombies way more fast, and it allows you also not to be too tired, because killing zombies over and over is actually quite tiring. But they also gave us a lot of different characters, because we tend to switch in between different characters in this season, so we get to experience the zombie apocalypse from different perspectives, which is really cool. And it's done in a very normal way, it's not done in a very serious way. There is a couple of characters who are really good at archery, because they are part of the archery team, and it's actually really funny because it kind of links back to the Olympic Games and how the Korean teams, they actually brought a lot of medals back home. So I had that at the back of my mind while I was watching the sequences here, and they are a lot more confident when it comes to actually killing them, because they are using things that they know, tools that they know, while most teenagers will not feel comfortable using, like breaking a chair and using one of the legs to stick it into someone's neck, right? While someone who is an actual archer will be more comfortable just throwing an arrow at a moving target, because that's what they do most of the times. And it's something that feels incredibly realistic, and it also allows you to tell the story from a different perspective, which is something that we don't really get when it comes to zombie apocalypses. They tend to commit to a very specific tone, to a very specific set of characters who live through the apocalypse in a very specific way. Think about The Walking Dead, and that's the only thing that we get. While this series here feels very dynamic, it keeps changing over and over again in between adults, teenagers, and it keeps evolving, and it keeps feeling so dynamic. And even look at how much passion I'm putting into this to convince you that this might be honestly one of the best zombie series that we've had in a really long time. And the second one would still be a South Korean series. It would be Kingdom, which is a period drama, which is about the zombie apocalypse once again. The themes actually get explored when it comes to the bullying, when it comes to students being so upset that they wanna commit suicide, and also with the fact of class fights, so people who are poor being on welfare and being supported by the government, of course, and other teenagers not understanding what that actually means, and just 100% just being racist against them and being so incredibly mean.
좀비물을 많이 보지 않는 분들도 지금 우리 학교는 재밌게 보실 수 있게끔 하기 위해서 여러 가지 기재들을 동원을 했었어요. 학교라는 공간도 되게 발랄하고 산뜻한 공간으로 좀 처음에 노출시키고 보여주려고 했었고요.
It's incredible how they managed to link all of these themes here to the zombie apocalypse itself, so that basically the themes have consequences within the story itself, and it's not just things that belong to the past, they have repercussions into the present as well. There is a scene, for example, where this one character is going downstairs to look for phones because someone tried to leak a nude picture of her.
Give me my fucking phone, man. What's wrong with you? Give me my fucking phone, bitch!
And she wants to prevent everyone in the school to see it, so she went down to smash all the phones that are there. And we have another character who is trying to get a phone to call the emergencies. And we have two different characters who we've been following since the beginning of the series, who have two different goals. The goals are linked to the present and to the past, but they both come into conflict when it comes to the story of the series. And it really works out, and it's really, really cool. Also, like when it comes to the cinematography, I love how much they experiment when it comes to all the different camera work that they do in these Korean series. Whether it is how they use the low budget in The Silent Sea, whether it is how they use the different CGI monsters in Hellbound, and here in All of Us Are Dead. It's how they present all the different transformation of the zombies and all the different parkour kind of scenes. I love how the camera is just floating around and showing you the scene from different perspectives. It feels once again very dynamic. And honestly, when you look at most American series, they tend to be shot a lot like sitcoms. Last week I was talking about Peacemaker, and I really enjoy Peacemaker when it comes to the narrative itself and the characters and the dialogues, but honestly, it looks like shit. It looks like it was shot like The Office, especially if you compare it to the different flashbacks that they had for the film Suicide Squad, which had a very different color palette. It is using all the different techniques of filmmaking to actually make the story more dynamic and interesting. It is not just pointing the camera at something and being like, okay, act in front of the camera, that's it. And this is true for a lot of the different Korean series that I've seen across the years. Even the weirdest ones, they always try to do something interesting when it comes to the camera work, and it's always dynamic. It's always either handheld. Also, this series here is the one that made me realize, is the pandemic actually over? Because there are so many extras in this series, it's insane. I have never seen so many extras in a single room in such a long time. The cafeteria scene with the sprinklers, the emergency sprinklers going on at the same time, and all the zombies trying to eat at each other while also sleeping on the floor because everything is completely wet, is so beautifully staged. And all the different scenes that they do with the drones, for example, when they're looking for a character who has disappeared, they're so cool as well, and everything is so perfectly staged. Honestly, I don't remember the last time that we saw an American series with such a big cast that looked like this. Even when you think back to The Walking Dead, when you see big crowds of walkers, they just look like sheep. They look like they're walking around. As soon as they hear something, they just go like, "Wah, wah," and they slowly go towards that direction.
See, I coughed.
Christine!
It doesn't feel dynamic, it doesn't feel impressive anymore, while the stuff that is going on within this series feels very impressive. Honestly, I think that in the next few years, we're gonna be getting so many different TV shows and films from Korea that it's gonna be at the same level, and it's gonna be actually competing with Hollywood and the American TV series, because the American TV series have started to do really boring stuff with low budgets. And people keep watching it just because it is attached to big stars. And it's a bit of a shame. I don't think it's working that well. And I really hope that in the future, South Korean films and TV series will just become the monopoly, and people will start watching it, of course, in the original language, and will get adjusted to subtitles and stuff like that. I really hope that it happens.
Have you ever heard of Korea?
No.
Suvi, you're Korean.
Oh.
But anyways, that was me talking about these 3 different series. I recommend all of them. If you want something short and incredibly thought-provoking that reminds me almost of the scripts of David Fincher, you should watch Hellbound. If you like zombie stuff, watch All of Us Are Dead. Definitely good. Even if you like K-dramas about teenagers, I think there's a lot of stuff that you'll definitely enjoy about All of Us Are Dead. If you enjoy science fiction, I recommend The Silent Sea, even though it's definitely the one that is more underwhelming, that there is less happening in that series there, but it is still really cool when it comes to its original concept. Having said that, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what you thought about these 3 different series and which one you liked more. Every single like that you drop is gonna be another zombie being killed in the series All of Us Are Dead. So smash that like button until all the zombies are dead and we can go back to our normal lives. 그럼 다음에 또 봐. I'm Patrick, and this is Torn Apart. There's gonna be a lot of footage of me drinking. Some nice ASMR for you. Don't know if people like that. I hate it. I'll hate editing this part.